bad morning.
It's fine, I can smell the hyacinths.
Yes, yes. Hello there, welcome to Beechgrove. I'm just saying, it's not a bad morning, but there's still a little bite in that wind, you know.
It's dropping at night time. I think we've got to still be a little bit careful,
Oh, we do
haven't we?
indeed. Now, you've taken me to the flower garden,
I
as it were.
have. I think there's some striking displays here, and let's start down in the bottom corner.
Yes, yes.
To explain that last year with the spring bedding, we had the same idea with the violas, but we planted the bulbs right through the scheme, and you couldn't see those violas.
Right, yeah.
So we've gone for the bulbs in the centre and the violas around, and that's a nice combination.
What's that variety? Because it's
that is Rapture, cyclaminous type narcissus, lovely reflex
How do
petals.
you get these names? I don't know.
Goodness knows.
That one took my eye earlier on, that little multi-headed one.
Well, you need to smell that one as well, Jim. Silver chimes, lovely fragrance, almost sort of jasmine. Again, a bit like hyacinths, I suppose.
Yes.
Then we've got the polyanthus. I'm never too sure about mixing the colours. I quite like sort of single colours. But the tulip's quite nice.
Yes, it doesn't do it for me for some reason or other. That might be why. I prefer just the contrast one colour with the other.
So the white one there with the yellow centre, that's concerto.
Okay. Now we come here, we've got obviously good polyanthus, but the tulips are still to come. But they will work because that's going to be in flower when the tulips
I think
come
that's quite striking.
Yeah.
That tulip is foxtrot.
Okay.
And in that little tub over there, it's starting to flower. So it's going to be a pink.
Apple blossom
blossom.
type pink, yes.
Yeah.
But this is a guy. This is the daddy of them all, isn't it? Isn't that a belter?
Well, he's amazing, that tulip, but it is a mistake because, again, what's happening is that we can't see the polyanthus. And it should have been a compact dwarf variety of tulip, Shakespeare, which I know that one quite well because it has stripy foliage and it's sort of orange and yellow. So I don't know what we've got, but you like that one.
Well, I certainly do, and I would certainly plant it, save it and plant it again, but I might report it back and hope to get my money back.
Well, get some replacements.
Great, it's great to see all that colour, to be honest. It's just wonderful. Meanwhile, in the rest of the programme.
I'm in a city centre park which is just about to undergo a fabulous facelift.
And this is Caragana arborescens pendula, a big long name for quite a small tree. It's known as the pea tree and it's a relative of the laburnum. My specialist subject this week is picking out a few trees for the smaller garden. Well, it's time to get the early potatoes planted. You can see what the ground was like before we started here this morning. Quite rough. The weeds are beginning to grow, so it's ideal time to do it. And the first thing that Mary did, not me, was to fork the ground into a sort of smaller bits. Then we tramped it just to firm it up, and now the fertiliser goes on for the first row of potatoes. This is ounces to the square yard, you know, sort of. There we go. And it's kind of placement either side of the row where the tatties are going. Right, Mary, let me pass, I'll get the line.
Okay.
On you go. You keep on going. You don't want to stop folk working. The next thing to do is to get the line set. Then we'll be planting the early potatoes. And the first one is Abbott. Now, I've never grown Abbott before, but Miss B grew Abbott on the decking last year, and she compared it with Rocket and thought it was much better than Rocket. So it's been promoted to the full vegetable plot. And we're going to plant them today. And you reckon from planting time, sort of 12 weeks or so, we should be harvesting some nice totties. Then we'll follow on, we'll have Maris Bard, which is another well-known early potato. It goes in next, in the next row. And then it'll be second earlies and early main crop, and so on. So, now then, Mary, is that straight?
I'd say so. Perfect.
We used to say, this is a Scottish phrase, a man with a corky and a blunion would never notice, right? And we plant them about, are you going to do the planting, dear?
Yes.
Good for you. I'll put them out about a foot apart, 30 centimetres if you're metricated, and we look forward to a handsome crop of Abbott. From planting, it takes about 12, 14 weeks, much depends on the weather, before you've got a crop worth harvesting. Next would be the second earlies. and they take a little bit longer. So you finish up with a continuous supply of new potatoes, which is the whole point. What's the soil like? Because it's been freshly done, you see, it's quite easy to handle.
Yep. And it's more tatties on the decking, but of course here we'll be growing them in containers. And I always like to try something slightly different because I don't know how many years that I have grown tatties in containers, but it's well worth it. So this year I'm using this container, which we tried last year, really successful, very happy with it, and it's still looking good. The cost of that is around about £2.70. But if you're maybe trying for the first time and you don't want to spend too much money, we found these containers and they only cost £1. Perhaps a little bit more flimsy. I don't know how long they will last, but it's well worth a try. Also, because it's slightly bigger, I reckon I can get 4 tubers into this one. And variety-wise, now Jim, he was planting earlies. These are second earlies. It's a variety called Jazzy, and they're going to take a couple of weeks longer. So instead of 12 weeks, maybe 14, perhaps 15 weeks before we can harvest them. Compost is in the bottom, just a few inches. Then you put the tubers in. Then we put a little bit more compost to cover the tubers, and then as the shores start to grow, you gradually fill up that container. So that's Jazzy, and in the catalogues they actually say that's a salad potato and it might be as good as Jersey Royal, so we'll definitely have to have a taste test with that one. I've also got Elfie, another second early, never tried it before, and Jemson, another second early, also that's meant to be a good salad potato. So we will have 6 containers. Also, I'm introducing a little bit more fruit. Last year, Jim and myself, we introduced a lot into a small bed. It's amazing what you can fit into that. And all the fruit in there is quite small. And I thought this time we'll try some in containers. They're also recommended for hanging baskets, but a hanging basket's really open to the elements and it's quite difficult to get your watering right. So I thought instead, and it's a little bit of a tip, I've upturned one of the containers using exactly the same container, so that acts as a pedestal, and therefore the fruit can trail over. I've got a strawberry, and the variety is called Cherry Belle, so that's slightly confusing, isn't it? But the fruits are meant to mature to a deep purple colour and also meant to be really sweet. I'm introducing as well another raspberry. This time it's called Ruby Falls. We've got Ruby Beauty in the bed there and it's looking quite healthy. That's going to tumble down by about 12 inches. And then lastly, all these other containers, I'm going to be really busy with lots of crops, mainly salad crops, and we want to sow them little and often. So if I start sowing now, maybe in about 3 weeks' time, I'll sow some more. So we've got things like lettuce, coriander, rocket. Also, I'm trying a couple of varieties of beetroot. I've already sown the beetroot in here, and they come in little seed clusters. And the seed cluster, it means that it should contain lots of little seeds. But the 2 varieties I'm trying, I've got Monetta and Solo. They're both monogerm varieties, so only one seedling within that cluster. And that helps reduce the thinning. And we'll compare those when they start to mature.
I've long held the view that a garden is not really a garden without a tree or 3. And of course, if you're going to plant a tree in your garden, you want to know what size it'll grow to, because it's an investment for a very long time. So you've got to do your homework. Is it going to be big enough? What's the growth rate? How soon will you have to start pruning it? All of these things. Well, we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at some of the trees that we've planted in the garden here over the years, and 1 or 2 new ones to extend your knowledge. And here we are by this wonderful birch. These were planted in the late 90s when this garden was starting to grow, so to speak. Could you cope with one of these in your garden? Perhaps not. We'll find something smaller and a little bit more compact. That's the story today. In this little ploy, we invited all the presenters and the staff to pick a tree that they thought would be suitable for a small garden, taking into account the shape, the size, the rate of growth, whether it's got nice flowers, whether it's got fruit, autumn colour, etc, etc, etc. And we put them in a line so that we can compare these very things one with the other. And this is my choice. Prunus snow showers, a lovely little weeping cherry, absolutely at its best at the moment, looking gorgeous. Fine for a small garden. It won't take up a huge amount of space. It'll come out the way, of course. And you see cherries all over the country. As long as the drainage is good, it's going to work fine. So here it is, it's planted, it's ready for the last stage of filling in. And into the hole went some mycorrhiza, which you see there, a little cupful, spread around so that the roots are in touch with it, and a bit of fertiliser as well. So it only remains for me to finish it off, fill the hole in, trap it down. Well, this is Chris's choice. This is Cornus controversa pagoda. Chris has chosen this because of its wonderful flowering in the spring and some berries in the autumn. But the real key to this plant is its autumn colour, dark red, absolutely stunning. The only tree we could get a hold of had this enormous ball of soil around the roots, a really big ball of soil, and a very short stem. So staking it in the conventional way was not going to work. So what we've done is so-called invisible staking. 3 pins put into the ground either side of the ball, and then trapping it down and put these cross pieces. And that root ball won't budge. That's the motive for doing this. You've got to keep the root ball still. It's absolutely still so that it's not going to rock about and break new roots. And now I suppose this is the time when you cut the strings and you get the full benefit of this tree. It's really rather nice. So far, we've been dealing with newly planted trees for the average garden. But there are some trees in the Beechgrove here which are good plants for any kind of garden. My first choice here is Prunus cerula, with its wonderful bark. An absolute stunner of a cherry, the Tibetan cherry. Now, I'm 5'8" in old money. This has been here for 20 years, and I reckon it could be accommodated in a lot of gardens. It's an absolute cracker. This is Carole Baxter's choice. It is a sorbus, a rowan tree, and any kind of rowan tree is suitable for a small garden. This is a particularly special one, and I would agree with her, it's one of the best. This is Sorbus vilmorini, and all the good things about it are that it's got beautiful lacy foliage, nice flowers in the spring, berries in the autumn, it doesn't get too big, it can be grown in most types of soil. So vilmorini is one of the top of the list trees. It's the one by which I would probably judge others. We've chosen at the same time here to illustrate another way of staking. Here we've got a double stake this time, and I'll show you the reason why. Mr. Callum, sir, we're going to put a crossbar on here, because in windy sites, our prevailing wind is behind us here, so it's going to blow this tree, and it could blow it over. But using this technique, there's no way it's going to blow it over. Right, putting the crossbar in place. Why not that side? Because the wind blows against the crossbar and onto the main, so it's not going to shift it. And the tree is on the other side, so when the wind blows the tree, it's going to tug away. It's not going to get pushed up against the crossbar. So it's safe and there's no chafing at all. So we're ready now to put the tie on here. Good, good. Once round the tree and once round the crossbar. And if you find that that is not enough, you can put another one on and put it the other way around. This specimen has been chosen by the staff. It's a crab apple. It's called Royalty. It's very popular. It's been around for quite a wee while now. And its principal attributes are, of course, the copper foliage and the lovely deep pink flowers that come on it in the spring. You'll notice we've given it a sloping stake. That's another option that some people might prefer. So that one's done well, and we now go to George's choice, which is an Amalancher rainbow pillar. This is new to me, not Amalancher, but this particular variety. And George is very keen on it. Again, shape, beautiful white flowers in the spring, great autumn colour, grows on most types of soil. This is another cracker. Get on with it, dear boy. We've just finished planting George's choice Amalancher rainbow pillar, and that would indicate from the name that it's going to be a poplar shape, isn't it? Well, this is another Amalancher. This one's 15 years old, and this is Lamarckii. But once again, I'm 5'8". This is what it'll grow to in 15 years' time. But it's another topper, coppery coloured early foliage. You can just see it coming through, flowers and good autumn colour. Well, this is the last curtain, I suppose. This is Brian Cunningham's choice, and it is a belter. Acer grosseri hertzii. It's one of these wonderful maples with grey-green foliage, and then when they've all dropped, you've got that wonderful, wonderful snake bark effect on the stems. Now, the whole lot will need looking at again fairly soon because there's a small matter of pruning to be done, but we'll leave that for another day.
This splendid plaque on a building in George Street in Edinburgh commemorates the birthplace of the Royal Caledonian Horticultural Society. The Cali, as it's fondly known, first met here in 1809. Its purpose from the outset was to draw together people from the professional and amateur ranks to encourage and support horticulture and gardening across the whole of Scotland. And I'm happy to say, as Honorary President of the Royal Caledonian Horticultural Society, a new chapter in the Society's history is just starting. Not here, but over at the other side of the city.
Saughton Park and Gardens is one of Edinburgh's hidden jewels. Located in the southwest of the city, the 8-acre walled garden and surrounding parkland has a rich history in horticulture. Laid out in the 17th century on Saughton Hall Estate, the grounds were home to an old country residence, later converted to an asylum. Patients used the surrounding gardens as an early form of horticultural therapy. The grounds were eventually sold, and in 1908 Saughton hosted the Scottish National Exhibition, which attracted more than 3 million visitors to the park and gardens over the 6-month event.
Recently, Saughton, like many other parks and gardens across the country, have struggled because of lack of funding. So 2 years ago, the Cali and the City of Edinburgh put together a joint bid for Heritage Lottery funding. They've been successful, and they've won 3.8 million. And the city has added extra to that great tranche of money. So now they can revitalise this park, which is an absolute gem.
Peter McDougall is a Project Development Officer with the City of Edinburgh Council.
So what's the surrounding population like? What's the demographic that we've got here?
It's amazing. It's a city centre park. You know, we're right next to one of the busiest roads in Edinburgh. We have lots of ex-council houses round about. There's some quite affluent areas and some quite poor areas as well. We have a higher than average population, people with long-term health problems. So, you know, there's an interesting demographic.
So how many locals actually use the park?
Local people, strangely, 40%. It's astonishing. I met a chap who just lives across the road there last year who'd never been in the park, and he's lived here for 20 years. So there's a kind of hidden gem at Saughton Park. So the idea is that we start to run events in the park. So we hope to try and take that up to about maybe 50%, I think, is the target of local people, 50% of people from further afield.
Plans for Saughton's horticultural facelift include creating 140-metre double herbaceous borders in the central path. To the garden's south, bedding will be removed and replaced with herbaceous planting in an informal prairie style, which will allow clear views of a newly refurbished bandstand. Old stables will be turned into a community meeting space, and outside will be the Callie's kitchen garden, where horticultural workshops will be run. A courtyard will accommodate plant fairs and farmers' markets, while a new cafe will keep gardeners and the public fed and watered. Jasmine Khan is a landscape designer and Callie Vice President.
So what's happening to this bit?
Well, as you can see, this is the rose garden, the old rose garden. A lot of these hybrid teas and floribundas are now looking a bit past their sell-by date. We'll be replacing them with new, fresh, healthy hybrid teas and floribundas.
We've just come out of the old winter garden. Is it on the plans? Are you improving that?
Yeah, we have great plans for the winter gardens. You see, at the moment it consists of old polycarbonate panels that were put there in the 70s. We're going to replace them with glass so that you can see in and out.
Over that wall there is a physic garden. So what's the plans for that?
We'll be rebuilding the raised beds so that they're completely accessible by wheelchair users to come and garden. It's called a physic garden because we're obviously going to be planting lots of herbs. There'll be descriptions beside each plant saying what you can use it for, what its medicinal purposes are, what its culinary purposes are, and that sort of thing.
This is a huge project. So when's the finishing date?
The end of the summer 2018.
You have your work cut out, my dear. I wish you luck.
Thank you, George, thank you.
With that deadline looming, the Callie volunteers and local community are already hard at work. Stage 1 of the restoration is to give the garden a tidy up ahead of building contractors arriving in June.
We've got a plant here, Miscanthus zebrinus, which has done what it always does, grows outwards. And that means all the young bits are on the outside. So the middle sort of dies off naturally, it doesn't need itself. And you get a whole lot of dead wood, which just comes away in your hand and really can be discarded. And then when we're dividing, we're cutting away the middle bit, so you replant the small bits on the outside so that they then repeat what they've done before and start growing outwards again.
When you're moving a shrub like this, which is well established, it's always best to basically contain the branches because it limits the damage you'll do when you're actually digging it out. So that's the first task that we've got to do, is gather it round, and we're going to hold it right.
The mantra is dead, diseased and crossing. You start with the dead wood, you take all that out because that can die back. Then you find anything that looks diseased and nasty, so throw that away. And then anything that's crossing in the centre, so you leave the centre quite open. Then you go around the edge and you try and cut it back to outward facing buds, so it makes a nice bowl-shaped rose bush.
This is a Miscanthus zebrinus. It's a good idea to cut these back so that you can see the new fresh growth can come up cleanly. But if you don't cut them down low enough and leave that sort of length up, then what it means is that when you're bending down to weed something else, you can really easily jab yourself in the eye with one of these, and it hurts.
Once complete in summer 2018, Saughton Gardens will become a permanent home for the Callie. David Knott is the president.
The plan very much is for our new headquarters to be here, and as we develop the garden, we will develop the garden through time for the benefit of the local community as well. We have very ambitious plans to develop our core educational programmes, our Grow and Learn programmes, our Master Gardener, and with other therapeutic gardening charities like Trellis, to really maximise the potential of this space.
200 years since the first meeting of the Callie, and this is where we are now. Where for the next 200?
The value now of health and well-being 200 years ago was only becoming apparent. That's why many of these parks and green spaces throughout the length and breadth of Scotland were developed. Now, hopefully, as we develop this space, the value of health and well-being continues to be recognised very much for the future.
This is a time of year when we're recommending that gardeners use a mulch on the garden, on the fruit crops, and in the shrub borders to cut down weeding and so on, and to feed the plants. It has implications for cost, however, and I'm interested in that particular thing because I sometimes think people don't realise how much it costs. So we've set out a little observation here. This is Colquitzia, the beauty bush, same one in each plot. There are 4 different mulches at 2 different depths. So we start off with a material which I've not used, seen it before. Some enterprising farmers found that straw, when composted, makes a very fine mulch. So this is strulch. But to cover 1 square metre, 2 inches deep, sorry about the mix up there, £5, quite a lot. This is a commercial bark, which is £4.50. This is a finer commercial bark, but nonetheless, it's only £3 to cover that square metre to 2-inch depth, square yard if you like. And then our own composted bark, zilch. It speaks for itself, the argument has been made, but nonetheless we've dropped it down from 2 inches deep to 1 inch deep. The question is, will that be enough? When will it need topped up? Only time will tell, but May reckons that if you can make your own, you'll not be out of pocket.
Well, you know, I'm not sure how many favourite flowers I have, but this is one. It's the snake's head fritillaria, and when you look at the petals here, perhaps you can see why it's called a snake's head, because of the patterning on them. They are gorgeous. These ones have been naturalised in the wild area or the wild wood. I also planted them in the lawn in autumn time last year, and they're a little bit behind. You're just starting to see some of those flower buds form. And I think that's quite interesting because within a garden you can have these little microclimates, and here it must be just a little bit more sheltered and warmer.
Earlier in the programme I was planting trees. I wanted to come back to this one, an especially important point. Here we have the little weeping cherry, the very first one I planted, with a single stake, and notice that this plant has been grafted right at the top of the stem. We're used to seeing other fruit trees and things where the graft is just above ground. Here was the stem has been made of the rootstock, right up to here, grafted at the top. And vitally important that that is protected by staking at this point here, so that there's no stress on the graft. Well, I'm glad we've taken a little detour around this corner because isn't that looking splendiferous?
It is absolutely gorgeous. I'd call it a large shrub, really, would you?
Yes, I mean large or small tree.
Yeah.
Coryllopsis, Passiflora, absolutely stunning. Do you get any smell from that?
I can't get any
I'm not good at it.
fragrance.
No.
But it is beautiful. I mean, you get good autumn colour as well, don't you?
Well, indeed, and doesn't it go so well here with the pulmonaria?
It is really nice combination, the blue and what would you call that, lemony lime, I suppose.
Lemon yellow, yeah.
Anyway, if you'd like any more information about this week's programme, it's all in the fact sheet, and the easiest way to access that is online. Next week, Jim, I'm off to Ardeshir, and it's all about saving money again. It's vegetable gardening on a budget.
Yes. And I shall be doing the old turnip job again, looking at some new varieties of the summer turnips. No salad this week. I haven't recovered for last week's. Until next time, bye-bye.
Goodbye.